Hey everybody, Dirili here. Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of Hakuouki Demon of the Fleeting Blossom. We are on Saito Hajime's route. You can just sit back, relax, and let me read you a story.
Excuse me, but the line that separates the real from the false in this instance is exceedingly thin. My furies are stronger than any humans in Japan. Strength is the only truth I need. So long as we have these men, no one can stand against us. Not the shogunate, not the imperial army, not even the western nations who would conquer our great country. Once we have destroyed anyone who would challenge our rule, then demons will once again rule the world.
He laughed a maniacal cackle and looked greedily out over the furies. Amagiri sneered in disgust and looked away from Kodo, as if the man made him sick. Probably does.
This is vile.
He shut his eyes and turned away.
Damn it, why won't you die?
I'm not used to trying to kill people who won't die. This is starting to get annoying. The constant fighting had taken a toll on both of them. They were breathing heavily, and their clothes were wet with sweat. And I imagine some blood, too. No matter how they fought, though, the Fury stood up after every mortal blow, and their inexorable advance continued. One of them reached for me. Ah! Saito's sword slithered out of its scabbard and dove deep into the Fury's flesh. But the creature only stumbled back with a grunt, then shook itself and began to advance again.
Ugh, this is getting us nowhere. They're just going to keep this up until we're too tired to fight back, then slaughter us.
That sounds pretty bad.
Alright, Saito, I guess it's time.
Right. Time for what?
Come with me, Chizuru. Hijikata told me that if anything were to happen, you and I were to try and escape as quickly as possible.
But I can't just run away and leave the rest of the soldiers here to die.
If you stay, you will only make their task more difficult. Come. Come on, man. You don't have to be like that. Pretty sure there was a nicer way to put it. Don't worry about us. I mean, you do know who you're talking about, right? We're crazy strong.
Yep, I love those two together, Sanosuke and Nakakura. Guys! My vision blurred as tears sprang to my eyes. I felt terrible leaving them behind, but Saito was correct. If I stayed, I would only get in the way. I bowed to Harada and Nakakura, and then Saito tugged my arm and we began to run.
This sunlight must be causing him great pain. What drives him then? Power, perhaps? Fame? Or...
Love!
Men, capture that girl! Make sure she is not harmed. I need her alive.
A roar went up from the Furies, and they turned to pursue Saito and myself.
Damn.
His hair was suddenly white. Saito, no! You can't do that! The sun's out! But he didn't seem to have heard me. The Furies came toward us, and Saito's sword began to move. Each strike hit in the heart of the throat, and when they went down, they didn't stand back up again. His technique was incredible. He grimaced and put his hand over his nose and mouth so that the smell of blood wasn't so strong. Even so, his face had grown pale, and sweat was darkening his clothes. Saito? He looked down, and his arm holding the sword fell slack. What was going on? He had never done something like that in battle before. Oh no! His lips parted, and a groan of pain slipped through them. Then, moving so swiftly that the eye could barely see it, his sword flew through the air, but it had none of the grace of Saito's usual movements. Instead, he hacked away again and again at the Fury in front of him, his entire body shaking with rage, blood flying with every swing. Saito, what's wrong with you? We have to go! But he no longer heard me. His whole body was drenched in blood, and on his face was a hideous smile.
Well, then the blood has finally driven him mad. A shame. I thought perhaps he would prove different than the others.
A sigh drifted down from somewhere over my head, and Amagiri jumped down lightly from a tree bench he'd been sitting on.
If the Fury blood has taken you, then the least I can do is end your life myself.
He crouched down into a battle stance. I knew what he was about to do. No! I leapt toward him, desperate to protect Saito.
No! Stop, Chizuru!
I could hear his voice behind me, but I couldn't stop. Saito still didn't understand that there could be more to his life than killing. A life where he would never need to draw his sword. Until he did, I couldn't let him die. I heard the sound of a sword meeting flesh, strangely close by. Slowly, I fell forward. Had I tripped on something? What was going on? The left side of my chest throbbed with pain, and I felt something hot and wet trickle down the front of my body. I couldn't feel my hands, and my legs had gone numb. I couldn't stand. There was a blurry form standing in front of me. My eyes refused to focus. I couldn't make out who it was. The figure's mouth opened, and I heard it call to me. Or so I thought. Huh? Wait, so who killed me? Was it Saito? Did he accidentally kill me because he was out of control? Or did Amagiri kill me because I got in his way? I guess we'll never know. Alright, so that was the first ending, and let's move on to the second ending. In which case, this time we need to give him blood. Heisuke had told me that blood was the most effective way to counteract the pain. There was no time to think then. I pulled my sword and drew the edge of it across my finger. Thick red blood dripped from the wound, down toward my palm. I held my hand out toward Saito. Please, Saito, drink. He looked at me, curiosity and confusion behind the pain in his eyes. It's all right. I'm a demon. This cut will heal in just a few moments.
But...
if you don't drink, then you're going to be in a lot of pain for a long time. I'll be fine, just please. I held out my hand again. Then, at last, reluctantly he took it and began to drink. With every drop of blood he swallowed, I could feel his breathing start to calm. Eventually he stopped, and his lips pulled away from my finger. You look a lot better. Thank goodness. He looked away, ashamed, and spoke in what could only be described as a sheepish tone.
Does your wound still hurt?
Not at all. It's already healed. I guess being a demon can be pretty useful, huh? I tried to be as cheerful as I could to cheer him up and make him feel less guilty, but I wasn't sure how well it worked. He looked at me for several long seconds, almost as if he wanted to say something, but in the end he turned away, and when he spoke, his voice was flat and businesslike.
Let's go.
With no more ceremony, he stood and began to walk. It didn't seem that he was particularly comfortable with drinking human blood, but I didn't see any other way. It couldn't be helped. And just like last time, I have to say maybe you're right. And in this choice, I must save because we're going to have to pick up from here again for the next ending. And this time the choice will be to make him to endure it again. Oh, but okay, because we gave him blood before, I guess even though we made the same choice this time, it's still a little bit different. Saito! I started to run toward him.
No, stay back.
Oh, but he looks pretty hot like that. I stopped mid-stride. But...
You don't need to stay here. Go back to camp. This isn't the first time this has happened. It'll pass.
His breathing still sounded painful, but his eyes looked straight into mine as he spoke. If he didn't want me there, then I had no choice but to leave. Okay. I turned and walked slowly back to the camp. Had I done the right thing? Had there been anything else I could have done? And here in that fight that we died in the last time, we have different results. He squeezed his eyes shut and rubbed the blood off his face with the back of his hand.
I apologize. I must hurry.
Are you alright? There was so much blood on him, the stench of it was almost overpowering. Between the blood and the sunlight, the pain he was in had to be unimaginable. His balance was unsteady as I reached out a hand to support him. He looked up at me and shook his head. The Furies had surrounded us, and standing at their head.
Why are you such a stubborn girl, Chizuru?
The man I'd once called father looked at me with cold, cruel eyes. He was no longer the man who'd raised me, but every time I saw his face, I felt a sharp pang in my chest.
Ever since you were a small child, all I've ever wanted for you was happiness.
I don't know if you were planning to pimp me out to Cosmo even back then. I kinda doubt that.
Now, come here. Leave that fury be.
He held out a hand, the same hand that had patted me on the head and treated my wounds as a child, beckoning me to him.
Don't. It's a trap.
His breathing was ragged, but I could hear the hint of desperation in his voice. When you say you want happiness for me, what do you mean by that? Maybe, just maybe there was something still left in there of the father I'd loved. His smile gave me an answer before his words did.
Why, I mean that you'll be Lord Kazuma's wife and bear him children with pure demon blood. What else could I mean? That is the single purpose for which I raised you.
Yeah, that's not happiness. To hear the voice I'd grown up with say such horrible things. I knew he'd gone mad, but even so, each word was like a knife driven into my heart. To him, I was only a tool, something Kazuma could use to incubate his demonic spawn. Hot tears rolled down my cheeks. I'm sorry, it might make me a bad daughter, but I can't do that. Suddenly, the smile was gone, his face twisted by rage.
Furies, capture that girl and present her to Lord Kazuma.
His eyes shone as he barked orders to the Furies. They roared in response, their snow-white hair shining in the sun, and started toward us. The sword at Saito's hip disappeared soundlessly from its scabbard as he drew it and cut down the charging Fury.
Time enough later to cry, for now we must escape.
Yes, my love. He grabbed my arm. We ran. His left hand flew back and forth as we went, the sword it held flickering through flesh and bone. Blood splattered across Saito, and the stench of it filled the air, but he pushed on. Our hands clasped tight, we ran toward Edo as fast as our legs would carry us. Most of the new soldiers had no combat experience. They stood no chance against the Furies. In the blink of an eye, the Koyo Regulatory Company lost whatever advantage they'd had. Kondo had no choice but to retreat. The rebels commanded a company of Furies, both more numerous and more powerful than the Shinsengumis, which came as a shock to those who had thought the Furies were a secret. What would happen to the Shinsengumi? They'd thrown in their lot with the shogunate, but now the shogunate was collapsing. Without an answer, we scattered and escaped back to Edo. Chapter 7. March 1868. After Saito and I returned from the defeat at Kofu Castle, we made our way to the Hatamoto Mansion in Edo that had become the Shinsengumi's de facto headquarters. We didn't have to wait long before Nagakura and Harada joined us. Kondo and Hijikata, however, took somewhat longer. Nagakura and Harada's frustration had not cooled. If anything, it now burned all the hotter. These men had been friends and comrades since before the Shinsengumi was even formed, but now they were at each other's throats. Saito and I tried our best to ignore whatever division was forming and busied ourselves with whatever else we could find. Then, finally, one day... the divide. Don't go!
Well, it's been fun. Try not to cry too much after we've gone.
Are you really going to leave?
Well, it had to happen someday. Still, I'd be lying if I said I wasn't going to miss you guys.
You really don't think you might be able to compromise with Kondo or something? Can't you talk it out? I think they just tried.
We've already tried to talk it out. It's not working. Hell, last time I just about socked him one. Good thing I didn't have my sword on me. Hey, Shinpachi, don't forget the rules of conduct. No fighting other members. Whoops. Wait, we aren't captains anymore. That crap doesn't apply to us.
They were just as glib and lighthearted as they'd always been. It was hard to believe that they were really leaving us. Where are you going?
Huh? Well, I mean, it's complicated.
He scratched at his nose and furrowed his brow. When he spoke, it was haltingly, as if he wasn't quite sure himself.
It's not like we're pussing out, because it looks like we can't win and fight against the Imperial Army. I mean, we haven't had any guarantees we'll live another day since Shiei Hall. How do I put it? It's like, if we stay here and this keeps up, then what we've been doing with our lives, is it going to mean what we wanted?
What? He frowned and rubbed his head, deep in thought. Whatever his reasons, he was sure of them. It was just communicating them that was difficult.
Kondo and Hijikata have always wanted to be real samurai, but I never really cared about that. I just can't get my head around busting ass for some lord I didn't even choose. How am I supposed to risk my neck for a guy like that? I don't mind getting shot by all those rebel punks, and I'm not scared of getting cut open. It's just that I don't want to be dying and think, damn, I wish I'd done that thing differently, you know?
Saito's head jerked up, almost involuntarily. His features smoothed out again almost immediately, but there had been something in Nagakura's words that had spoken to him. Do you feel the same way, Harada?
The same way? Ah, come on. Don't let me in with some jackass who ran away from his domain and his easy, stable life so that he could practice sword fighting. You'll make me sad. Shut it, Sano. You left your domain too.
Harada lowered his voice and leaned in closer to me.
To be honest with you, I feel like I can't look at Kodo the same way I used to these days.
What do you mean?
How do I explain it? It's like he's a kid who's just gotten a toy he really wants, but he doesn't know how it works. Back when we were at Chiei Hall, or even when we were in Kyoto, cutting people up, I thought, well, I never thought he'd end up like this.
My heart sank with every word Harada spoke. The more they said, the clearer it became that their minds were set. There was nothing anyone could do to make them stay.
Anyway, we're going to be out there kicking Imperial Army ass. That's right. It's not like we'll never see each other again, so stop giving me that look.
I guess you're right. I wanted to believe that we would see each other again, but I couldn't shake the feeling that we were saying our final goodbyes. After all, we were living in an era where the shogunate, Japan's core for more than 200 years, was no more, and the Choshu domain, once outlaws, now claimed governance over the country under the authority of the emperor. How could anyone know what tomorrow would bring?
Well, it's time we were on our way.
Wait, I'll walk you out.
Nah, don't worry about it. Besides, if you do that, it'll be even harder to say goodbye. It's no trouble. We'll see you out.
Nagakura and Harada shrugged, and Saito and I accompanied them to the front gate. It is going to be harder to say goodbye. Alright, take care, you two.
Sure thing. You too.
Harada had already started out when Nagakura stopped and turned to look back at us. He paused for a moment, then walked back to Saito, his face serious.
You plan on staying here forever, Saito? Yes.
There was no hesitation in his voice.
As a man who has been exiled from his domain, this is the only place where I can live as a warrior.
Nagakura frowned. He opened his mouth to say something, stopped, then started again.
Maybe you shouldn't think of yourself as someone who got exiled from his domain. What do you mean? Just look at it like you quit. You resigned from your post because you were serving under a god who didn't deserve you. You pick your swords or your clothes, or hell, even your wife, right? Then tell me why you shouldn't choose your own lord then, Knock it off, Shinpachi. Not everybody's a dangerous subversive, you know. Stop trying to preach to the guy. Hey, I'm just trying to help. Yeah. If we keep talking like this, we're never going to leave. Let's go.
Alright. They waved goodbye to me and Saito, and then Nagakura and Harada were gone. I glanced over at Saito. His face was unreadable as ever, but his eyes stayed fixed on his two former comrades as they walked away. Minutes passed before he finally spoke, his voice quiet.
Shall we go back?
He sounded calm and collected like he always did, but hidden in his words was a tiny hint of loneliness. I hate splitting up! That night, Kondo and Hijikata finally returned to the mansion.
Sorry we were gone so long. It feels like it's been a while since we were here last.
Kondo didn't seem particularly enthusiastic to be back at the mansion, however. Nagakura had said they'd gotten into a big fight right before he left. Perhaps Kondo was still upset about that.
Not a problem. I'm glad to see both of you are safe.
He bowed quickly to each of them. It had been quite some time since they'd had a meeting, but the only people in attendance now were Kondo, Hijikata, Saito, Sanin, and Heisuke. I knew there was nothing to be done about it, but the room seemed so empty.
Alright, give me the details. What happened at Kofu?
Bad stuff.
The Imperial Army really have furies?
Saito nodded.
Yes, they are different from ours. They do not seem to suffer an aversion to sunlight. What's that?
Sanin's head jerked up. Hey, I think that's the first time I've seen Sanin in his Western clothes. You look good there.
Are you sure about this? Will it work on those who have already become furies?
He scrambled across the floor towards Saito, his eyes bright. That's a good question. I was wondering what would happen if you drank the water of life twice.
Questions can wait, Sanin. He's not done.
He frowned at Saito, who slunk back, clearly displeased.
Alright, Saito. How'd they get a hold of the Water of Life? Somebody in the Shogunate sell us out? Well...
He looked over at me and hesitated. I gave him a small nod, and his lips tightened in confirmation.
The Furies were there with a demon by the name of Amagiri, who was connected to the Satsuma domain. It appears the Furies were created by Kodo. Their speed and strength both seem to be superior to that of our own Fury Corps.
Hijikata rested his hand on his chin, and his brow furrowed in further thought.
The sunlight doesn't bother them. That's one less vulnerability. And they're more powerful than our Fury Corps, Not good.
His fingers tapped absent-mindedly on the floor. Their conversation wasn't what worried me, though. There were 6 people in the room, but only Saito and Hijikata were talking. Kondo had sighed despondently at several points, but stayed otherwise silent, and Sanin...
Daylight, Furies, power, Water of Life, a donation of blood.
Oh, that can't be good. You're losing it, Sanin. His eyes didn't seem to be focused on anything in the room, and his voice was a constant stream of bizarre mumbling. Heisuke sat off to the side, his eyes glued to Sanin, and an expression on his face that suggested he wanted to say something, but wasn't sure what. Oh, Heisuke, you really shouldn't have cut your hair. Nagakura and Harada had left the Shinsengumi, and Kondo seemed to have lost his ambition. The burden on the few remaining men had only grown larger. Okita was still being treated for the disease that was eating his lungs and was in no condition to lead, let alone get out of bed for more than a few minutes. That meant the only person truly fit to still act as a captain was Saito. He'd been a Fury for quite some time then, and although his bloodlust had gotten worse, he hadn't let it keep him from his work. They never say how Heisuke's been doing. He seems to be doing fine. Still, knowing how desperate the situation with the Shinsengumi was, I could hardly ask him to take a break. All I could do was sit by and watch him struggle through each day, looking as if he were about to faint. Sometime later, Hijikata suddenly spoke up during a routine meeting.
It looks like we won't be staying at Edo any longer.
What do you mean?
The Shogunate bigwigs in Edo Castle don't seem interested in fighting anymore. So instead of sitting around here and missing out on a chance for a battle, we're going to go meet up with some people who are willing to fight. And then, you mean we're going to Aizu? Right. Denshu Company, the Shogunate's New World Army, and Yugeki Unit, the Aizu, the Kuwana, they're all still fighting.
Isn't Denshu, or Nagakura and Harada went? Maybe we will see them again after all.
Lots of people aren't happy about the new government. Right, Kondo?
Kondo said nothing. He didn't appear to have even heard Hijikata.
Kondo, are you listening?
At last, Hijikata's words seemed to penetrate the haze surrounding Kondo, and he looked up.
Oh, yes, right.
It certainly wasn't the rousing affirmation Hijikata seemed to have been prodding him for. He sighed again, and his shoulders slumped.
Toshi, do we have to go to Aizu too?
What, you just want to sit around here and mope? What kind of leader is that?
Of course. Who else is going to lead the Shinsengumi? Look, don't worry, okay? It's not always going to be like this.
It was kind of him to try to cheer Kondo up, but everyone in that room knew that Hijikata's words were a lie. When life is good, everything goes according to plan, but once things turn bad, success is almost impossible to find again.
So, how do you plan to do this? Aizu's pretty far away.
Dr. Matsumoto's friend, Kaneko, lives in Nagarayama. We're going to use his house as our headquarters. We'll move everything to Kaneko Mansion in stages.
Huh? Makes sense. I guess it would be pretty impossible to move everything to Aizu all at once.
Saito finally spoke up.
Commander, what about Soji? He's still in Sendagayaga.
Hijikata frowned.
Kondo and I saw him the other day. He's not in any kind of shape to carry a sword right now. Unfortunately, we're going to have to leave him in Edo.
I'm kind of surprised he hasn't drank the water of life already. I guess when he wasn't protecting me, he really wants to stay human?
I see.
His voice was as flat as ever, but I thought I saw his shoulders sag just a little. Saito and Okita had known each other since they'd met at Shiei Hall. He likely wanted to fight alongside his friend. Oh god!
New Furies, a donation of blood, more blood, Kondo.
Sanen's mumbling had grown louder, and his eyes were wide and bloodshot. I think you guys might have to take care of him soon. The rest of the room did their best to ignore him and focused on the other issues at hand. I don't know if you should ignore him, guys. When had Sanen changed? When had all of them changed? After the decision was made to leave for Aizu, activity at the headquarters ramped up. There were so few people left in the upper echelons that a small group was forced to handle all the important tasks that needed doing. Saito, are you alright? Maybe you should rest a little. You were up working really late last night.
We have a great deal to do, and not much time in which to do it. I have no time to rest.
He looked as if he might collapse at any minute, but it didn't seem to slow him down. But if you wear yourself down before we even get to battle, then everything you've done will be a waste. You really should rest. If you can't sleep during the day, then at least sleep at night, like everyone else.
I do find myself especially tired during the day, but I'm much stronger and faster than when I was human.
That's not the point. Saito's health was clearly still low on his list of priorities, if it was even on the list at all. He might be more powerful than he'd been as a human, but that didn't mean he could just ignore the condition of his body. The way he talked, it sounded as if he saw himself as nothing more than another tool, like a sword or a suit of armor. Okay, now we're gonna go ahead and stop the video for now. I think we should have another ending in the next episode. I'm not sure which endings are good and bad. It doesn't really mention in this walkthrough. So we'll just have to see as we go along. There are 2 more though. Alright, so hope to see you in that next video. And I'd be so grateful for any likes, comments, subscriptions, or shares with your friends to show some support. Thank you so much for joining me, and I wish you all health, happiness, and safety. Dirili signing out. Bye bye everybody.